This week, the power of whiskey brands as we come to you, and let me tell you, our arms needed no twisting from the WhiskyBrother shop in Hyde Park here in Johannesburg. Also, what does the Sell C campaign really want us to believe in? And why this campaign got an ad agency into a whole lot of trouble. A very warm welcome to Mags on Media. This week, a big scandal to hit South African advertising. A top Loeries Grand Prix has been withdrawn after it was discovered that the winning campaign never in fact ran. The advertising agency is MetropolitanRepublic, and it's been slapped with some harsh penalties by the event organisers themselves. Joining us now on Mags on Media is Andrew Human, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Loeries. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. What in fact has the agency done?
In short, the agency entered an entry for MTN called Project Uganda. Once a week in a national newspaper, they ran a poster, and on the poster was printed in the one execution a whole set of library books. And they said, this is not a poster, this is a library. So then children and school pupils in Uganda could use their phones and they could type in a code and download the book from the poster and access a whole wealth of literary information that's normally not available to them. And then in the other execution, which was for banking, they had posters saying this is not an ATM, this is a bank. And in the same way, you could type in codes and you could do a whole plethora of banking. You could pay bills, you could open an account, and etc., etc.
Right. So on the surface, it sounds fine. Where's the problem?
Well, the problem is that absolutely none of it ever happened.
So they cheated, in other words?
Well, you could describe it in any way you want to, but the impact is that not one element of it happened. So the newspaper ads weren't run. The codes didn't link to downloadable books. Not one school pupil in Uganda downloaded one book.
All right. The agency itself, I'm led to believe, is suggesting this should have been picked up by you guys.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. So the agency's position or reply is that they didn't have management oversight over the entry. The CEO and the creative head didn't improve the entry. The entry somehow slipped through the cracks of their procedures, and in fact their client didn't approve it either. So that they said it's an unfortunate entry that got through without all the checks and balances in place. So on the surface of things, one could perhaps accept that. However, what I question and what I find difficult to understand is that this entry, prior to be entered in the Loeries, was entered at the Creative Circles Ad of the Month, where it won an award, so it got exposure. It was entered at Cannes, which is the world's largest festival and has the largest panels and the most credible judging panels. In both those shows, it got through. It didn't get an award at Cannes, but it was never discounted or disqualified. And on top of that, Paul Warner was a judge on the Loeries panel that judged this work.
Paul Warner is the creative head of the agency.
Paul Warner is the creative head. He was a judge on the Ubuntu category. Pete Curry, who's the executive creative director, was a judge on the print panel. So this entry came up before them as judges. When it was awarded a Grand Prix at the Loeries, the agency then accepted the award and immediately afterwards even carried out interviews where again the chief creative spoke and waxed lyrically about the entry.
Has this done any damage, in your opinion, to the credibility of the Loeries Awards program?
Well, I think absolutely what's really done the damage is some of the response from MetropolitanRepublic, where again MetropolitanRepublic have said it's the Loeries' fault and it's the industry's fault. And Metropolitan have said scam is rife in the industries, the Loeries accept scam as the course of its business, and we shouldn't be even shaking our heads at this entry, which is absolutely couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that's why we have to act to on that misperception.
You have punished the agency in what respect?
I would say we've introduced measures to ensure that this sort of behaviour doesn't occur, and we have to ensure there are consequences. The agency is not allowed to judge at the Loeries for the next 2 years, that all the agency's entries for the next 2 years will be subject to additional scrutiny, and also we revoked all their awards this year, irrespective of the brand or the category.
Probably not for you to say, but what about the big client involved in all of this, MTN?
Well, I think that is a very interesting question, because again, when Metropolitan Republic say the job was for us to actually, we should never have accepted the entry. You know, it's a very strange thing, because we were given again the polished entry, and as I say, their own representative was on the judging panel, and this entry was queried by the judging panel, and Paul Warner gave answers to the judging panel, so he answered to the entry's credibility. One of the big issues was knowing that MTN was the brand associated with us. One automatically goes, well, it's MTN, you know, who would send something through with MTN's backing that hasn't actually flighted?
We'll certainly endeavour to get a view from them. Andrew Himman, Chief Executive Officer of the Loeries, thank you very much for joining us, and just for the record, we have given the agency in question, Metropolitan Republic, the right to reply. And this is what they sent us. Metropolitan Republic, as an entrant to the Loeries, respects the terms and conditions of the awards and accepts the board's decision to retract all awards won by the agency in 2013. Metropolitan Republic believes in the integrity and privilege of our client relationships and the work they entrust us with. Group Chief Executive Officer Alison Deeb commented, "We deeply regret this error, and we will take the strictest measures to ensure that this type of mistake does not reoccur." You can let us know what you think about this story on our Facebook page on this address. And very quickly now, your thoughts on some brand campaigns that we have featured on the programme in recent weeks. All right, let's start with this. Some mixed views about the TBWA Hunt Lascaris Be the Most Famous You campaign. Mariana and Lindsay thought it was great, while Justin told us it was a load of nonsense. Nadine really loved the Johannesburg Zoo's Tweeting Honey Badger initiative from the Draft FCB agency.
Daddy, I am going to teach how to eat an Oreo.
The new Oreos ad had most of you going, ah. Ryan commented that he thinks it's cute, but maybe appealing more to an older market. And also the majority of you who commented on the new Santam ad thought it was creative and effective, and a good way of getting people to behave more responsibly. You also seem to share our sentiments on the hilarious Claim Kimmy ad by Ogilvy in Cape Town for Halls. Judith, one of our viewers in the United Kingdom, also enjoyed it. Some of you, however, failed to see the link to the Halls brand. Now, one of the more difficult brand challenges I would suggest to you is to market so-called micro or hidden brands. They're all high quality, but not necessarily high profile. And a good example of this is whiskey and single malt Scotch whiskies, as you see behind us. Well, someone who has taken up that challenge is Marc Pendlebury, our host this week from WhiskyBrother here in Hyde Park. Marc, a very warm welcome to you.
Hi,
I'm looking around here and I'm saying, I have died and gone to heaven.
Welcome.
Why don't you just go and let me be honest? Seriously though, it's a great idea, a real niche marketing here. Where did the idea come from?
Well, as a passionate whiskey consumer myself for many years, I was a bit frustrated with the current offering in South Africa, particularly in Johannesburg, and the idea was to try and create something that catered exclusively to whiskey drinkers. I'd also done some travelling and I'd seen the concept in other countries, and I just thought it would work here. We're a big consumer of whiskey per capita, and the fact that we didn't have something like this was quite surprising.
Who are those customers? In marketing speak, what's the demographic?
It ranges quite a bit. You know, the idea of the kind of archetypal, elderly white male drinker. There are still those drinkers, of course, but we're seeing a whole new generation. Mixed age, 25 upwards. It's quite a wide demographic.
What makes a successful whiskey brand?
A big part of it is the marketing. You cannot be successful in South Africa and compete with the giants that currently exist if you're not active and you're not pushing hard. The smaller guys, which obviously we try and cater towards and we try and specialize in, It has to be word of mouth and it has to be about taste as well.
Is it more difficult in the South African market? I would suggest to you that we are ostensibly a nation of brandy and beer drinkers.
Well, I mean, believe it or not, we're the 7th biggest market for Scotch whisky in the world. And we've actually dropped into 7th. We were originally in 5th. So in the last several years, we've been in the top 10. So whiskey is a giant in this country, even though we have obviously a very big wine drinking base, as well as beer and brandy. But whiskey is very much here, and it does very, very well. I think the challenge for the smaller brands is to compete with the giants in terms of the whiskey brands.
So how do you articulate that difference? I mean, that's the point that I made in my introduction, that it's all very well to have these massive brands with a big marketing spend, but a lot of these brands that we're seeing here, very unfamiliar names.
It's about coming in, it's about discovering a new brand. You know, if you like whiskey, you'll be familiar with, you know, let's say 5 of the big names in South Africa, but it will come to a point where they don't really excite you anymore. They don't give you what you need.
So your job is to sell the promise of something different.
Yes,
yeah?
of something different. Yes, you know, I'm brand independent. You know, it's not for me to decide which whiskey is better. It's for you to decide which whiskey is better. It's for me to kind of equip you and give you enough information for you to make your choice.
Is there an optimum way of making that conversion, of explaining to them what the promise is?
They have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
You know, we do get customers that walk in that all they know is what they've been told via the TV and the adverts, and they're not looking for anything new. But then you get the individuals that are kind of on the brink, they're on the cusp of, you know, branching out, and they're right for the taking. And then there's those that have already discovered the new stuff, and they want to, you know, find more.
To tell our audience today, we are recording this before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
It's far too early to start, isn't it?
It's Scotland somewhere.
somewhere in the world is Scotland. Marc, thank you very much indeed. Marc Pendlebury from WhiskyBrother here in Hyde Park, our host on Mags on Media this week. Coming up on the programme, Cell C's advertising agency takes me to task over my comments on its new Believe campaign.
News that moves. enca.com.